What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your Rock Shaker 10. These come in two different colors of black and classic wood, but the setup for each is the exact same. So along with the sub itself, you also get this power cable to power the sub. So one of the cool things about the Rock Shaker 10 is this grill here. As you can see, we have it on right now, but if you wanted, you can actually take this off for a different aesthetic. So to do that, you're just gonna reach in front of the sub here, and then you're gonna feel the border that holds the grill for the sub. So once you have a good grip on it, you can pull it out like so. You'll hear it starts to pop out, and there goes your grill. So this is just one of the looks you can have with your subwoofer, but if you wanted to add the grill back on, you're just gonna line up these points here on each corner of the grill to the inserts here on each corner of the sub, and then just pop it in just like that. So of course we have the power switch to turn on or turn off the subwoofer. And at the very top we have the power LED, which will let you know that the sub is powered on and working. Below that we have the volume knob to control the overall volume coming out of the sub. And then we have the frequency knob, which acts as a low pass filter, which basically means it's gonna control the frequency range that's coming out of the sub. So for example, if I set this knob to 100 Hertz, everything from 100 Hertz and below will be the frequency range that comes out of the sub, and we won't be hearing anything above that 100 Hertz. Next to that, we have the RCA line input and output section. So we can use the RCA line input to connect from receivers like a home theater setup, a mixer, etc. And then we can use the RCA output to expand our setup even further to additional speakers or more subwoofers. Next to that, we have the high level input section, so we can receive signal from different sources through speaker wire. And then below that, we have the high level output, so we can send signal from the subwoofer out to a different source through speaker wire. We also have a phase switch to switch the polarity of the sub between 0 degrees and 180 degrees. And we can use this to sync up the sub to the rest of the speakers in our setup. So for example, if you're listening to music and you're hearing that the kick drum sounds like it's going in instead of pushing out, you can try using this phase switch to line that up to the rest of the speakers in your setup. And lastly, we have the auto switch, which is really cool. If we set this all the way to on, this means that the subwoofer will automatically go to sleep when it's not receiving signal from anything like your receiver or receiving any music in general. If you didn't want to use this feature, you can just set it to the auto mode, so you can use the power switch to turn the sub on or off. And if you set this all the way to the left on off mode, the subwoofer will stay powered off no matter if you have the power switch turned on or not. Now, one of the setups we can use with the Rock Shaker is with a smart TV like this one here. And for this setup, you want to be sure that the TV you have has RCA outputs that can be used for audio. So if we take a look at the back of this TV here, you'll see we have the RCA audio output, so we can use it with the sub. So to connect the TV to the subwoofer, I can take an RCA cable, plug one end into the RCA audio output on my TV, then plug the other end into the RCA input on the back of my sub. Now from here, we can set up the rest of our speakers for our setup by using either the high level outputs on the back of the subwoofer to connect to the terminals of your passive speakers, or you can use the RCA output to connect to a powered speaker or maybe even a receiver that has your speakers plugged into it. So once you have your speakers all set up, you can go into the audio settings of your TV, switch the audio output to RCA audio out, and you can also go into the advanced settings and go to the audio format and switch it to PCM to ensure the best sound quality possible in stereo. Now another way we can use our Rock Shaker 10 is with our home theater setup right here. So we have our receiver that acts as the main hub, and then we have two speakers connected to the receiver. So the receiver we're using today actually has a dedicated RCA output called sub out to use with a subwoofer, but in case your receiver doesn't have RCA output, you can daisy chain off of the speakers that are plugged into the receiver and plug into the high level inputs on your sub. So to do that, you're just gonna get two more sets of speaker wire and plug them into the positive and negative terminals on the back of the speakers. Then you're just gonna unscrew the high level input terminals on the back of the sub, and then plug the other ends of your speaker wire into the positive and negative terminals for the left and right input. Alternatively, you can use the terminals on the back of your receiver and plug straight into the subwoofer and then daisy chain your speakers from there. So to do that, you're going to grab 2 sets of speaker wire, plug one end into the positive and negative terminals for the left and right outputs on the back of the receiver, then plug the other ends into the left and right high-level inputs. After that, you're going to daisy chain from your subwoofer to your speakers by taking 2 more sets of speaker wire, plug one end into the left and right high-level output of your subwoofer, then plug the other ends into the positive and negative terminals for your left speaker and right speaker. So again, this setup is just in case your receiver doesn't have the RCA outputs, but like I mentioned before, we have a dedicated RCA output for a subwoofer called sub out. So if we're going to use that, we can take an RCA cable, plug one end into the sub out on the back of the receiver, then plug the other end into the RCA line input on the back of the sub. From here, you're going to want to raise the volume on the back of the sub so you hear the low frequencies coming out, and you can set up the frequency knob or the low pass filter to the desired frequency range that you want to hear coming out of the sub. So now that we have everything all set up, I'm going to place my subwoofer on the floor so we can really hear those low frequencies and hear how it sounds. Right away, just really bumps. Oh yeah. Woo. Oh man, you're feeling it right here. And shaking the room a little bit. Ah man, sick. Wow, that's crazy. So another way we can set up our Rockshaker 10 is with our audio interface and our recording setup. So there's a couple of ways we can do this depending on the type of setup we're using. For example, this interface we're using today, the R-Track 2x2, has 2 sets of outputs that we can use between the XLR outputs and the 1/4 inch outputs. Right now we're using the XLR outputs for our main speakers here, but we do have the 1/4 inch outputs still available, so we can use these with our sub. So to do that, I'm going to use these RCA to 1/4 inch cables here. I'm going to take the 1/4 inch ends and plug them into the 1/4 inch outputs on the back of my interface. While I'm doing this, I'm going to keep track of which is coming from the left channel and which is coming from the right channel. Then from there, I'm going to take the left RCA cable and plug that into the left RCA input. Then I'm going to take the right RCA cable and plug that into the right RCA input. From here, we're going to raise the volume on the back of our sub and then set the low pass filter to the desired frequency range we want to hear coming out of the sub. We also recommend double checking the sound settings for your laptop or computer, as well as the sound settings for your DAW, so that you can hear everything coming from your interface out of your speakers and your subwoofer. Now, if you're using an interface that only has 1/4 inch outputs, there is another way to set up your sub along with your main speakers. So to do that, you're going to take your RCA to 1/4 inch cables and plug the 1/4 inch ends into the left and right output of your interface. Then you can take the RCA ends and plug them into the RCA inputs on the back of your sub. And depending on the type of speakers you have, you can either take an RCA to XLR cable or more RCA to 1/4 inch cables, plug the RCA end into the RCA output of your subwoofer, then plug the other ends into either the XLR or 1/4 inch inputs on your speakers. After that, make sure to check the volume and crossover on your subwoofer and double check the sound settings for your computer and your DAW. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your Rockshaker 10. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.